Good evening. Welcome back into Finnerty. Hope you had a great weekend. Glad you're here. I'm Rob Finnerty. 63 days from Inauguration Day, and one thing has become crystal clear. As Joe Biden enters the final 2 months of his presidency, he will continue to embarrass America every chance he gets. They say that a picture is worth 1,000 words, but this one is only worth 5. Joe Biden is a joke. In Peru at the Asia-Pacific Conference over the weekend, when the 20 world leaders got together for their customary group photo, the leader of the free world was humiliated again. Joe Biden, who will leave office as an international laughingstock, a cautionary tale for what not to do as president, was really hard to find in this picture. Do you see him there? Can you point him out? Can you point out the man who controls the largest economy and the largest military on the planet? There he is. Back row, second from right, wedged between the leaders of Thailand and Vietnam. Nothing against the Vietnamese or the Thai, but those two countries have a combined gross domestic product about the size of New Jersey. And there's old Joe, smiling away. I have no idea what he's smiling about, but maybe he's just so far gone mentally that he has no real idea what's going on. He looks like he's having an absolute ball right there. I heard people on TV over the weekend trying to make the argument that it doesn't matter where you stand. Oh, really? In this same photograph, take a look at the president of China. Front row, center. You still think it doesn't matter? Of course it matters. Peace through strength matters. I call it peace through Trump now. But take a look at where Donald Trump stood in his last NATO summit before the pandemic. Front row center. But just in case you needed a reminder of how the rest of the world views Joe and Kamala, take another really good look at this picture. The fool in the back row, smiling away like he's on a cruise ship, waving to people on shore. This all changes day one of Trump's presidency, but we've got to get there first. And don't let the smile on Joe Biden's face fool you. Joe Biden is not going quietly, and he did something yesterday that has never been done before in American history. No lame duck president, lame duck meaning that he's leaving office in January, no lame duck president has ever escalated a war on their way out the door, ever in history, period. Joe Biden again, another historic first for all of the wrong reasons, and the implications could impact every human being on the planet. It's that serious. And the media, for whatever reason, are more concerned with Trump cabinet picks like Matt Gaetz, glossing over this story like it doesn't even matter throughout the course of the weekend. But it's one that could represent by far the most serious escalation in the war between Russia and Ukraine since the war began exactly 1,000 days ago. How do you like that for timing? From CBS News, Russian officials say Biden's decision to let Ukraine fire missiles deep into Russia could lead to World War III. From CNN, U.S. allows Ukraine to make long-range missile strikes into Russia. From the Associated Press this morning, Russia warns the U.S. over allowing Ukraine to hit Russian soil with longer-range weapons. So what does that mean? Well, essentially, with 62 full days remaining in Joe Biden's presidency and the trio of fools around him, Antony Blinken, Lloyd Austin, Jake Sullivan, they've just authorized Ukraine for the first time in this war's history, the first time in 33 months, to use U.S. missiles, they're called ATACMS, to strike targets deep in Russia. And you might be sitting there saying, well, look, Russia attacked Ukraine first. Shouldn't they be allowed to hit back at Russia? And the answer is simple. Ukraine is welcome to do anything they want to do with their own weapons. They can do anything they want to do with weapons that are made and manufactured in Ukraine. But the second you use weapons made in the USA, shipped to Ukraine, to hit targets in Russia, towns in Russia, cities that are in Russia, that changes everything. That means NATO and America are at war directly with the largest nuclear power on the planet. And that's a decision that Joe Biden should have not made without consulting directly with Donald Trump, the incoming administration, and the man who's going to have to deal with all of this in 2 short months. A man who campaigned on ending the war in Ukraine, which over the last 3 years has become the most deadly war in Europe since the Second World War, after Joe Biden famously said that he might allow a minor incursion into Ukraine. Listen.
Russia will be held accountable. if it invades. And it depends on what it does. It's one thing if it's a minor incursion and then we end up having a fight about what to do and not do, et cetera.
A minor incursion. Okay, so I'm not pro-Russian. I don't even think it's necessary to say this. I'm not pro-Putin. I am pro-American. But when Russia first invaded Ukraine in February of 2022, most Americans, look, they couldn't find Ukraine on a map. And guess what? 3 years later, today, most Americans still can't find Ukraine on a map. And while many of us are focused on our everyday lives like we should be, the war in Ukraine has continued every bloody day for the last 33 months. Over the past several days, the Russians have knocked out the power grid in large swaths of Ukraine, and now North Korea is sending thousands of troops to Russia to fight in Ukraine. This is a major escalation for sure, especially when you think about how Donald Trump had Kim Jong-un right in the palm of his hand during Trump's first term. Once again, the big concern for Joe Biden is totally selfish. It's not about you. It's not even about the people in Ukraine. It's about Joe Biden, who's worried that Ukraine might fall on his watch over the next 62 days. He's worried of his legacy. And he's once again playing Russian roulette, and I mean that literally, with American lives. Ask yourself today, honestly, are you prepared to send someone you love to Eastern Europe to fight for the Donbass region? If President Zelensky uses one of these U.S.-made ATACMS missiles and fires toward Moscow or any one of the large cities right over the border from Ukraine, there are 3 of them like the size of Boston, with at least 1 million people, and kills Russians, and Russia declares war on the U.S. or NATO, would Americans be okay with that? Because that is a what if that I don't think many people have ever really considered. And it's a what if that could become a right now, at any moment. It could become a reality. And putting this monologue together today, I didn't want to sound hyperbolic. I didn't even want to sound alarmist. But what Joe Biden is doing without your approval or the approval of Congress is not only reckless, it's just plain irresponsible. And you've got to ask yourself if that might be part of Joe Biden's plan. Is he deliberately trying to cause chaos for Donald Trump and his team? Is he doing this on purpose? A bitter old man, Donald Trump Jr., tweeting yesterday after this news broke, the military-industrial complex seems to want to make sure they get World War III going before my father has a chance to create peace and save lives. Got to lock in those trillions of dollars. Life be damned. The other part of this is the missiles themselves. What are these? Well, not only are these missiles made in the United States with a range of about 300 miles, but NATO personnel and NATO technology would be needed to operate these missiles. Ukraine doesn't have what you would need to fire these things off, even if they're launched from Ukraine, which means NATO is at war with Russia the second one of these missiles is fired into Russian airspace, which is not what Joe Biden told the American people when this all first started. Take a look.
Let me say it again. Our forces are not and will not be engaged in the conflict with Russia in Ukraine.
All right, you also have to look at the political situation in Ukraine right now. 33 months of war is going to be tough on any leader. And right now, for the first time since the start of the war, the worm might finally be turning on the Ukrainian president. Elections are scheduled in Ukraine for May. But elections are really difficult to conduct if there's a war in your country. So maybe there's more at work here than meets the eye. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if President Donald Trump called President Zelensky directly and said, basically, don't fire a single one of those missiles until I take office. And I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump called President Putin and said, look, wait until January 20th. We've got 2 months to go. Either way, Joe Biden is the lamest of lame duck presidents maybe we've ever had. In escalating a war, well, Dr. Jill packs up the White House is something that no other president has ever done before. And hopefully, look, cooler heads, I hope they prevail. And it doesn't take a mushroom cloud to get the world's attention and the attention of our own media. Because you deserve to know what your leaders are doing in your name, especially when they're doing it in your name without asking you first.